And joining us on the program today is, an individual that's a well-known entrepreneur out west, and he's doing it again here. Keith Kitani, CEO and co-founder with GuideSpark, who is one of the leading HR communication engagement solution providers. And as I said earlier, GuideSpark named to Forbes' most promising company list. Keith, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, nice to have you on, Keith. To our audience that may not know GuideSpark, give us a brief overview as to, who you are, what you do, and really, Keith, the genesis of why you created GuideSpark.
Sure, absolutely. So GuideSpark helps organizations communicate more effectively with their employees through customized video, mobile, and interactive experiences. And we do that across a number of HR topics like benefits, wellness, compensation, compliance, a lot of the typical HR topics. Where we are, we're about 7 years old. We have about 600 customers. One of the interesting things about our customer base is that we have customers as small as 100 employees all the way up to Fortune 500 across really almost every industry, from high tech to retail to city governments to manufacturing. And really it's because no matter what size organization you are, you have to communicate effectively with your employees, and a lot of organizations are really struggling on how to do that today. And the genesis of GuideSpark is I've actually been in communication since the late 90s. I started a company that became part of Macromedia and Adobe, and so we were creating a lot of learning platforms and tools. And what GuideSpark is doing is really trying to help combine technology and content to provide these customized video and mobile experiences that are not only cost-effective but much more engaging to the employees.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing great work for Keith. I know what you're doing across the space, and it's glad to have you on the program today. And communications and engagement and education is so paramount as we move towards really benefits in total, not just healthcare, but benefits in total being more consumer driven. And, we're expecting, the employees and their families to make the right choices for themselves and their families. But how do they do that if they don't have the right communication education programs around them, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as it gets more and more complex, right? The benefits programs, the breadth of programs is just amazing now.
And when it comes to benefits communication and education programs, you're bringing technology to play to what has been a very kind of, old traditional method of communicating, right? I mean, we were kind of stuck in the mud doing things the old way, information packets, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. One of our customers is 7-Eleven, and on one of her seminars, she says, I've been a benefits manager here for 30 years. And this is the first time I felt a need to change from my traditional communications, because for the longest time it's been, brochures, it's been employee manuals, and it's been seminars and PowerPoint presentations. And what we're seeing really in the marketplace is just a change in the way employees really want to consume information, and that's really how we're helping organizations really make that change.
And a lot of us say in this business that millennials are going to change the world, particularly as it relates to healthcare and benefits. And, how do your communications kind of differ for that, that set of emerging employees in this country?
Yeah, it's a topic that I talk to a lot of heads of HR around, because obviously actually millennials have now taken over as the largest group in the workforce, and they've always grown up connected. You ask a millennial when was the last time they weren't connected, and I don't think they can really remember. And yet you talk to a baby boomer, which is really the generation they're replacing, and they got computers in the midst of their career. And so if you look at that, we like to look at how people consume information in their personal lives, because we think that that's really driving a lot of the changes. So if you look at how people are consuming information, in their personal life, it's video, it's mobile, it's interactive. They're just having these engaging experiences. And so that's a lot of how we think about companies should think about changing how they communicate, because if that's how people are doing it in their personal lives, they're starting to have that expectation that they want to do that in their company lives as well. The other piece that we've seen that's been really interesting is obviously millennials are really taking to this types of new forms of communications, but we have quite a few examples where we have companies where their average age is in the mid 40s, and yet they have sometimes the best uptake in watching this content on video. So it's really becoming pretty prevalent, I think, across all generations that there are new ways that they want to get information. It's short, it's concise, it's video, it's available when they want it. It's been dramatic how much it's changed in the last 3 to 5 years. As I mentioned, I've been in this space for over 15 years now, and it's really changed rapidly in really the last 3 years or so.
When you, as you're working with these organizations, various size organizations, I mean, as you're alluding to, there's a diverse employee demographics. Do you execute integrated communication programs? I mean, do you still have or partner with call centers? Do you still partner with the on-site enrollment or communication programs? How do you work with an organization?
Sure. So, I mean, we usually work directly with the company and the benefits organization. We really do recommend still a multi-channel communication. I think that we're not in a day where it's like, okay, this is the only one that will work. We really believe in a multi-channel communication strategy. So, our on-demand video and mobile communications will complement live meetings. Will complement different seminars. So we think that it's still the time for multi-channel. But what we've seen really is that the way that you think about communication is starting to be thought of much more segmented. Because if you think about communication and YouTube, I think the average video length is 3 or 4 minutes, right? So if you think about that as a consumption, how are companies going to go and be able to communicate benefits information in those types of chunks? And we think that the direction people are starting to really have is to how do you personalize it to that each individual, right? If you know someone is a young millennial and you're describing a 401k program, give them that information that's relevant to them. They're not really thinking about retirement planning. Or a baby boomer, they are thinking about retirement. They don't need to know all the basics. So really how you think about segmenting information to make it short and consumable, we think is a real key evolution.
Now, Keith, benefits and health communications is really morphed into a 365, 24/7 type of program. It's not just about the open enrollment. Do you work with companies all year long around healthcare access, education, around wellness, education?
Well, they're also doing financial wellness too, which is a 365 challenge.
Absolutely. I think there are two big times for every employee. One is open enrollment, and the other is when you start your job on onboarding. But what we've started to see with companies is exactly what you said is ongoing communications around these things. So really thinking about how do you communicate. Obviously, wellness programs are year round, but even as you think about benefits, right, you can have ongoing communications, especially when you're going to have big changes that may start 6 months ahead. And we're starting to see that happen a lot more because, again, as I mentioned, if you're trying to give them bite-sized chunks of information, you want to feed it to them over a longer period of time. And so we're starting to work across that quite a bit, actually, with a lot of our customers.
How do you I know it's important, and you can talk to that, but how do you help organizations measure the effectiveness of their communication programs?
Sure. We think that's one of the key pieces in terms of thinking about moving to a digital realm. The story I always talk about is if you think about how communications around benefits has been today, it's really about one way, right? A benefits manager might measure communication as to whether they've sent a brochure, but communication is really two-way. Has someone actually received it? And so, with the video online, we track a tremendous number of statistics. So we can actually see, how far along did someone go and watch that? Not did they just open and start a video, but, how engaged were they? Did they watch it to the end of the video? Did they take an action? Did they answer a question in the video? Did they watch another video afterwards? And so you can really start to chart how they're using it, and whether they're really engaging with the content. One of the things that I think has been the most interesting kind of data that people are collecting around some of these benefits communications is what device are people using it on. So I think everyone guesses that lots of people have smartphones, but really how many people are actually consuming content. And it will really help that company start to evolve how they communicate. Because as you see the growth in mobile devices, you're going to have to start to tailor your communications for those devices, right? It's hard to read a 5-page PDF on a smartphone. So how do you really start to engage people in the devices that they're using?
So you actually can tell your clients exactly where this information is being accessed, what type of device they're accessing it on.
Yeah, and in addition, which zip code. So you can really start to even see which region, which department, is accessing the content more than others, and it really helps create what I consider to be an evolution of communication. So when you think about video and mobile, pretty much every head of HR is trying it for new. This is something really new, and so we work a lot with try it, measure it, and improve it. And think of it as an ongoing cycle of how you're going to get something that's going to be most effective for your population. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier. One of the things that people are struggling with in some organizations is you may have, like at a hospital, you may have some corporate employees, you may have nurses on the floor, you may have some janitorial staff. And so you have to think about how are you going to educate all of those different constituents effectively in a way that's going to work consistently but effectively for those different groups.
Yeah, and your tools, your solutions bring communications into the home for that husband, wife, partner, of that employee to really make shared decisions, which is really how it works. I mean, these decisions are not made solo by the employee; they're made together with the family unit. Correct?
Absolutely. Another key use case. So often. The employee is the only one who can go to the open enrollment seminar or the new hire training, and then they go home and they have to try to explain benefits to their family at home, and with the complexities and the jargon and all of those things, it's pretty complicated. And now we can they can watch the same video at the same time in a very short and concise way and make those decisions very quickly.
Yeah. How do you take your solution to market? You alluded to it before. I mean, you work directly with employers, but do you have channel partners you work with as well, Keith?
We do. We're starting to build out a good deal of partners. Certainly in the broker, health insurance brokers, right? Because they have a lot of clients, and all those clients need to be communicated to. And we're building out, broadly across a number of areas, with our financial wellness, with financial institutions, and we think that communication is a core part of a large group of partners in the health and benefit side, and so we're starting to do that aggressively.
When you see the emerging private exchange market expected to have 40 million plan participants enrolled in private exchanges by 2018. Are you beginning to have discussions with the various private exchange players where communication and education is incredibly important?
Yeah, we are absolutely starting to have those discussions with exchanges, but we're also having discussions with some of the employers, right? Because the employers are starting to think about how do they start to transition their employees. Right, and think of it as a multi-year plan of communication.
Yep.
As opposed to I'm going to do this on day one. How are they going to think about the communications and changes as an evolution until they actually make those changes?
Yeah, the employer, while the brokers, advisors, and all the others working with employers are very important as the community to develop the right solutions. I mean, the employers are the ones with the light bulbs on right now. They're the ones really innovating and really driving the ship right now, to your point. I mean, they really are moving these initiatives forward.
They are. But it's also interesting they have so many initiatives. I think we touched on it at the beginning, the breadth of programs that are now available, from, price transparency to innovative wellness programs to, telemedicine. In addition to these changes like exchanges, there's just so much change going on that I think is exciting for employees, but it's really important for employers to think about how are they really educating the employees so they're making the right choices for themselves across all these different options.
For our audience listening out there, talk a little bit about your business model for them. If somebody's interested in contacting GuideSpark and talking to you, I mean, what's your business model?
Sure. So we actually have a somewhat of a unique business model in that we actually provide our technology platform and our video content as a subscription service. And we do that because we think of communication as an ongoing thing, not a one-time thing. You mentioned it a few minutes ago. We really think about communication as an ongoing thing. Information changes very rapidly. Benefits information changes at least yearly. And one of the things when people in the past have gone to new forms of communication like video, they create it once, and then it's a struggle to keep it updated. And we've actually created a model where we're responsible for keeping all of that content updated. So when there are changes in programs, we make those changes and have that available to employees very, very quickly. And so we really start to align with organizations in terms of helping them doing ongoing communication, not just a transactional communication where, hey, I buy a video, if it doesn't work, okay, well, I'll come back to you and buy it again. We go and we say, here's a platform, let's create the content for you and customize it for your organization, because one of the things that we think is important is to brand it for that organization so it really builds that connection with the employee, but then to also launch it, measure it, and then iterate on it. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's really important when you're moving to a new form of communication to learn and improve so that you're making it most effective.
Yeah, so Keith, on the subscription model, is it a per employee or per month? Or
It's employer bands based on size, so not to the granularity of employees per month. It's per year employee sizes, and then the size of your library. Do you want a 15 video library, or do you want 100 video library? It all depends on the size of the library. Those are the two main things that we price on.
It makes a lot of sense. Well, Keith, we're at the end of this program, and really appreciate the time you spent. It's very interesting. I think you're right on target with what the needs in the market are from a communication and information standpoint. I'd like to give you an opportunity to leave our audience with a couple clear takeaways.
Sure. I think one of the things that we're seeing in the market is that the way employees consume content is changing incredibly quickly, and that corporations, in order to really connect with their employees around these hugely valuable programs that they have around benefits and wellness, it's really important to think about that communication. One of the things that we talk about a little bit is that oftentimes I think HR and benefits have to think of themselves like marketers. They have a great product and service for their employees, and they got to really think about not just creating that product or program, but making sure that the employees understand it, value it, and use it. And I think that communication is a really critical piece of that with the way that people are changing how they consume information.
That's great. And to our audience, you can find information on Keith's company at GuideSpark.com. Keith, I really appreciate you spending the time. I hope you can join us out at Forum West, coming up in November. You have a great weekend, and we'll have you on again sometime in the near term.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.